Okay, so for this tutorial, this is going to be kind of a recap of some of the things that we did in class when we built our own kind of simple Boxee rig and we added a little bend to it. You know, we created some custom attributes for and associated those with the deformers, those kind of things. So what I thought I would do is, one, as a recap, go over that procedure, but also do it in a way that adds some functionality to the Boxee rig that we've been using in class. Some people enjoyed kind of looking this as an option. So I'm going to use this file. I actually just posted something. Maybe I should just play this. So this is just a little animation that I did as an example of, you know, what you can get by with just simple little tools that in essence force you to think about, well, you know, what should those actions or those disciplines of the character be? So we're going to use that as an example with maybe we like the idea that what Boxee needs is to be able to twist a little bit across its body. You know, we have the bend and bend spin and the tilt and everything, but what if we added actually a twist deformer? How would we do that? And how could we insert that into the character? You know, what we did before is this little controller, we put bend and bend spin and tilt in here as kind of separate tool or separate attributes. So we're going to add one here in a second, but first let's go ahead and add the deformer. So this part's very important. If you've already done some animation, this is totally fine. That's not a problem. But again, this is kind of like, you know, if you're going to pull your character back into the shop and do some work on it in the garage, you want to make sure that, you know, it's centered, you can put it on the lift, and you can do the kind of work you need to. You don't want to be doing it, you know, out on the street or out in a parking lot where the animation is taking place, right? So what I'm going to do is go back to frame 1. And this is a relatively simple example. I had not really moved the character anywhere, but I did have some bend and spin on there. I don't want any of that to be there. I want my character to be just straightforward, flush, in that kind of default position. So, you know, it shows that I have keyframe information here. So if I go to frame 1 and I'm going to put 0 for all those, so I'm right back at that standard and the scale is at 1. I'm not going to destroy any of my animation with this, right? I'm just going to leave it there. It's highlighted really bright, kind of a whitish pink to show me that some changes have been made, but I haven't recorded those keyframes, and I'm not going to, right? I'm just going to leave it at frame 1. As long as I don't move that time slider, it's going to be fine. The other thing I'm going to do is go down to Boxee Body Geometry, or Geo. So you can see it has, and hopefully you can see this in the screen capture, these black lines on here, which just indicate that this layer has been in a reference mode so that I can't click on it. And I'm certainly going to want to turn this on later, but for right now I want to be able to select it so that I can add a deformer to it. Okay. The other deformers, well, we'll look at those in a second. So go back into shaded mode, hitting 5 on the keyboard. So I'm going to click on this piece of geometry, and it doesn't matter if you're in modeling or animation or rigging, they'll all be there. So we can go to deform and nonlinear. So before we did bend, and some of you saw that when you got the Boxee rig that I had added flare. So let's go ahead and add twist to this, right? Okay. So the twist comes in. Let's go to. So what you can see is that the fall off for this. I'm going to create another little camera so I can move around. I don't want to move that camera that I had set up. Right, so I have this camera 4.5. Maybe I should go into X-ray. Oh, X-ray is on. Okay, I'm gonna hide these layers. So you can see that the twist came in up above the character itself, and so if we look at the, if we click on the twist input, you can see here's the start angle that we're working with, and there's also the end angle, right? Which is a little weird. We can, you know, I don't really use that much. Let's go into the, we go into that twist. We can modify the low and the high bounds so that they're a little closer to the geometry. And this one would be 0.5, right? So let's just see how that changes the deformation. So you can see it's wiggling up there at the top a little bit. So let's do and then 1 down here again. So you can see that there's more happening at the top because the fall off from the bottom is translating up to the top of the surface. So I'm going to do minus 0.5 so I can kind of localize these a little bit in 0.5, right? So now when I twist down here at the bottom, you can see that the top stays put a little bit more. And if I, lowered these a little bit more, we can isolate where that twist is happening, right? So you can see it doesn't even affect the top, but it's happening at the bottom. So I think that's maybe a little too much. So I'll just do 0.5 for each of those. So you'll have to decide which one that you would like to do for these. Right, so I think the important thing to remember here with a little practice is the start angle is actually the bottom, if we want to think of it that way, of how the deformer is set up, and the end angle is the top. Okay, because what I don't want to do is actually have this deformer sitting around so I can select it or anything, and I don't want to have to dig into this. I want to have them all right here on that controller so I can easily put the bend and spin and tilt, and I'll see them all in the keyframes that I'm creating here. So I'm going to select the twist and put it back to 0. Okay, and we'll leave all these other translates where they're at. They should be just fine. It's basically centered in there, so we'll call that good. But the one thing I need to do is make sure, because if I move the character out of here, the controller's not going to, or the deformer's not going to go with it. So over in your outliner, just go ahead and I'm just going to unfold this a bunch of times. I'm going to hit those little plus signs there, right? So we had the all group and the translate and the rotate, the scale group, all these little things. And then we get to basically the Boxee object itself. And then we have the deformers that are in there. So there's bend handle 1 and 2. This one's grayed out because I've hidden it. It's the flare handle, right? So what I'm going to do is just, with my middle mouse button, I'm going to click on the twist handle and I'm going to drag and drop it so right on top of new Boxee right there, right? You can see it kind of highlights with a little dotted line, and I put it in there. So it's now part of that that group. So when I move the Boxee controller, the deformer is going to go with it. So that's very important for us to do right off the bat. Okay, so the next thing is we need to add these little attributes that we're going to use, right? So let's click on our Boxee trans controller, right? So we already put bend and bend, spin, and tilt on here. And let's add these attributes. So we'll go up to modify and add attribute. We'll pull that up, and so let's give this top twist. And I'll just say add, and I'll do bottom twist. I'll hit tab and hit add. So you can see they've been added here. So top twist and bottom twist are now in the attributes. They don't do anything, right? We have to connect those up, which we're going to do right now. So I'll close this, and we're going to go back up to Windows and relationship. Let's see, where are those? General, there it is, general editors. So window, general editor. You can see there's so many of these windows, I forget where they are half the time. General editors in the connection editor. Okay, so I had the Boxee trans controller selected, and because I did this, it automatically loaded it onto the left-hand side with the idea that, like, okay, this some attribute in here is going to drive some attribute of an object you haven't loaded yet. So if you didn't have anything in there, you could hit reload left to make that's there. And just in case you've toggled this button, which you can do, we want it to say from with an arrow to 2. So we want to take something from here and put it onto something over here. Sorry about my word emphasis there. Just want to make sure that's clear. So I'm going to scroll down just to make sure. There, sure enough, there's bend and bend, spin, and tilt, the things that we had added, but top twist and bottom twist. And you can see that they are not italicized, which just means that they haven't been connected to anything. Okay, so we're almost there. We almost have it. This is great. So the next thing we need to do is click on the twist handle, And then we're going to come over and click on its input, the twist 1. Okay. And so for this first one, what did I say? The end angle was the top, and the start was the bottom. So let's do the, I guess the bottom. Let's see. Did I make sure that's right? I'm confusing myself. That's right. The end was at the top. So let's do the top twist, and then over here we need to reload the right. So the top twist was actually the end angle. Okay, and that's why I kind of made note of that. And if we screw it up, we can come back and switch the two. And then the bottom twist was actually the start angle, right? So they highlight and they link together, right? So if I click on this one, we can see that they're linked to those attributes. I should be able to close. And now if I just go select here, you can see I've got a little top twist. Undo, and now I have a bottom twist if I need some functionality there. And just to make sure this is all working, we should be able to see that our deformer is running along, right, with the character, right, through my animation. I can turn these back on, right, so that they're in there. And since I've put that those attributes here, which I can access simply by selecting that main controller, I don't need to see that twist handle, right? It's kind of annoying that it's there, at least it is to me. So I'm just going to go select that in the hierarchy, and I'm going to hit H on my keyboard to hide it. And you can see that it's now grayed out over here, right? If I wanted to see it again, I can just toggle H so that it comes back up, right? So I'm just going to gray that out. I don't need that. Actually, do that for all of those, right? So I'll make sure that they're all visible. I don't need to select them because I've built these custom controllers for it, right? The last thing I'm going to do is select the box itself and go back to its layer and turn it into a reference. So again, I don't want to select that piece of geometry. I only want to select these controllers, right? And I guess the eyeball, right? We didn't create any custom controllers for that, but that's okay. All right. So this association's been created. We now have some new controls. So if I went back to let's go back to this one here. And so let's just say that maybe I wanted to animate this so it starts to twist. So let's just keyframe those there. And I'm going to keep it like that until we do the big turn. So maybe right here, I'm going to keyframe both of those. And then as it loads up, I'm going to twist it a little bit maybe back this way, and I'll key that. Let's see if it's here. Maybe I'll come back over. And kind of pop it back that way. And I'm being a little subtle with this. I don't want to really kind of destroy some of the animation I had there, but I want to just add a little bit of that twist, right? And maybe when it comes down and jumps, so let's put that top twist here. I'm going to twist it back the opposite way. As it comes down, actually, I want this to be at 0. So we just get a little bit of action out of that. You can't really see too much of it because it's up in the frame, but that's okay. So we can see I'm just being kind of subtle with how that works in there. All right, so we've added a feature to it. We've added, a couple custom attributes. We put a deformer onto our character. We associated its tough to select little inputs down in here that were confusing because they said start angle and end angle, but they seemed to be upside down if we think of this as start and end. At least that's the way I would do it. Yeah, we now have it part of your character. Not bad, just under 15 minutes. Happy animating.